Welcome to Office Hours 11. This is our module on Buddhism, and in fact it's the last module of China X Part 2. And you will hear us, Bill Kirby and me, be giving a final sort of summary of Part 2, and later an introduction to Part 3. But here I am with Tiffany Wong, our film editor. And Tiffany, we had a New Year's greeting.
We did.
Which was, we hope you learn something new every day in the year of the horse, or 马上有新知,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So there's a pun there, right?
Yes, because 马上 both means on a horse, ma being horse.
Right. And it's the year of the horse.
And it's also the year of the horse.
Okay.
And it also means immediately.
Okay,
so.
good. There is a question for me.
Yes, people are very curious. Where did you learn your Chinese? And have you ever lived in China?
Okay, so I began Chinese as a high school student and learning it during the summer. And then I went to college and I continued learning Chinese, and I went and lived in Taiwan for a number of years and learned Chinese there. And I've spent a couple of summers and a fall in China, right? And over time, I've actually learned how to speak a little bit of Chinese. Not very well, but a little bit. There was a question about why we use the term medieval world.
Yes.
And I thought I would just explain that basically we've used medieval to refer to the period after the Han Empire and before the Sui Tang unification of North and South. We're not using it in a particularly special sense. But there was also a question about why did we say in discussing alchemy in the self-realization module that we could have 1 hour equal 1 year? So
the numbers were so that if you changed the years to
days and hours,
it would be the same number, and so they made it equal. And an hour in Chinese terms is 120 minutes.
Oh, I see. So there are 12 hours in a day,
right,
rather than 24. Last thing I think we had was a mini survey, and it turns out that people like the close reading exercises quite well.
Yes, so we'll definitely continue with that.
Okay. And we also want to thank you for thanking the speakers,
yes,
the other faculty at Harvard that have been visiting our course and talking, Professor Robeson, Professor Tian, Professor Kodiyama, and we will be sure to let them know that you appreciated their participation. Okay? Now, I'm going to ask Graham Chamness to join me.
Yes.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Graham, welcome. You know, China X has film editors, and you've been talking to Tiffany Wong, who's a film editor, and you've met Megan Morrissey, who's one of our managers, and you've got Liu Junjie, who's one of our managers. Well, we have other people, and Graham Chamness is one of them, who are involved with looking at the content and developing assessments. Graham, you're an American?
I am.
And where are you from?
I'm from Colorado. Well, originally Boston, then Colorado.
But so where is Colorado?
Well, if you know the Rocky Mountains.
Rocky Mountains.
They run right through.
Oh, okay.
The center of
so
the
it's
U.S.
Anything special in Colorado besides the fact that it's in the middle of the Rocky Mountains?
Skiing.
Skiing.
Outdoor activities.
Outdoor activities.
It has more sunny days each year than any other state.
Really?
Yeah.
And is the air clear?
The air is very clear. Nice air.
Really good air and sunny
air.
Days.
Yes.
So a reason to go visit Graham in Colorado.
Welcome.
When you get a chance.
Fine.
One of the discussion questions was what people thought the greatest obstacle to the acceptance of Buddhism was. What kinds of answers did you see?
Well, we had a range of answers that was interesting to notice, mostly coming back to 3 main points. One was this idea that that Buddhism was not Chinese, it originated from outside of China. So this sort of xenophobic obstacle. The second was that it contradicted Confucian, traditional Confucian values. And the third was that it was a threat to authority. So for example, Domingo D.H. writes that the main fact was that Buddhism was not Chinese, was anti-Confucian. Carla S.S. Arte says the same. It was foreign and non-Chinese and a threat to Confucian values. Another interesting response from N. Bentley Buddhism united everyone's beliefs and therefore became a threat to authority, though especially emphasizing that I think Buddhism's ability to unite people made this sort of a threat, and also its ideas of non-attachment as knowledge collector rights, that these were contrary to mainstream Confucian.
So if your practice non-attachment, then it's harder for government to get you to do the things it wants you to do.
I think that's the gist of the argument.
Okay. Now, we had a picture of Guanyin, and we asked you what made you think that Guanyin looked compassionate. And we had a nice word cloud, but there was a sense of calmness, of the posture, the peacefulness, the facial expression, the sort of calm facial expression, tranquility, the look of Guanyin, that all this was sort of read as signs of compassion, I guess. But I noticed, some people noticed that Guanyin was missing a hand.
He or she is missing a hand here, and somewhat ironically, I guess, because many people wrote in the hand gesture expression is one of the signs of peacefulness, and the typical Abhaya Mudra, which indicates non-fear, or that you should not fear, happens to be missing. I think someone took the arm off of this Guanyin.
Okay. So it would have been something like this.
It would have been, is it the left hand here? Yeah.
Yeah,
it
the
would
left
be
hand.
something like this.
So meaning
don't fear.
don't fear.
Have no fear.
Have no fear. I'm here for you.
Yes.
I'm here to protect you.
That's right.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
It is cool.
Yeah. Okay. The final big discussion question, and an important one, was Hui Yuan's treatise on a monk does not bow down before a king. And there was a lot of discussion on this. And so I wanted to ask you, Graham, what you wanted to sort of, we can't do everything, but there was so much, and so many people wrote on this, but we could perhaps just cite a few of the most salient things.
Sure.
Do you have any picked out?
Sure. Again, there's so much, so unfortunately can't mention everyone. But I picked out 3 that I thought give an example of the variety of responses. One from Yunus L. Wasaki, who writes that as a monarch I would demand homage from the Buddhist monks. Bowing to a king is an outward expression of respect, which does not curtail the monk's freedom to practice his religion. And then he draws a contrast to Jesus when he was tempted by the Pharisees, asking whether it was lawful to give tribute to Caesar. And Jesus' response was, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's.
But in some ways, Hui Yuan is not saying quite that. Right?
He is not saying that. He's saying sort of the opposite.
Right. Don't render.
Don't render.
Right.
Unto
If you're a
the
monk.
government, what's the government?
Okay.
If you're a monk. And that brings us to Hu Wei wrote in that Hui Yuan touches on an important issue of the relation between church and state, and sort of argues that the government ought to concede exemption for monks to avoid the possibility of unrest, because monks precisely are a different category of social being. Because monks are different, they give up worldly interests, and their sole interest is in the cessation of suffering. And then a third, it goes in between both and argues, this is by P.C. Zhang, I would gauge my reaction toward Buddhism according to its effects on society. If the spread of Buddhism improves people's lives and leads to better civil conduct, then it should be encouraged. If the spread of Buddhism leads to a significant decrease in tax revenues and shrink in labor force, then it should be discouraged. And this is interesting because I think, in fact, this is what often did happen. Monks were exempt from paying taxes. They did not serve in corvée labor.
Right.
They didn't have to serve the government or
Go into the military.
Right. And so this is a constant theme, I think, throughout the history of Chinese Buddhism.
But only occasionally does the government act on it and try to suppress Buddhism.
That's correct.
In the Huichang era in Tang, which we'll get to later,
That's correct.
It tries to do that. Other thing that strikes me is that, the Chinese use bronze coins.
That's right.
And when you're having a Buddhist statue, you're making it of bronze. So you might think of that statue as being made entirely of money. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they were squandering wealth, and then that wasn't circulated back into the economy.
So it's taken, that's, I think, a very important point, it's taken up circulation. So these are 3 of the general kinds of responses we had, but we were quite struck and impressed by all the things you had to say, and see if I can't sort of embed them better in my lecture next time and credit you all for doing it. Okay? Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you next week.